Shabbat Shalom. Today is the 49th day of counting, which the Bible says we need to do, starting from the second day of the Pesach celebration, the Passover, the Jewish Passover, up till now, which means that tonight at sunset, the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, Pentecost in English, sort of in English because it's a loan word from the Greek, starts. But this study is a preparation, a specific preparation for it, in the sense that I'm going to go into the question how to prepare for the return of Messiah Yeshua. And we will do that now. I will start with the first of the three main texts of this study and from the Torah. And this is taken from the first chapters of the fourth of the five books of Moses, which starts today in Israel. They are already 1 week into the fourth book, Numbers. But in the rest of the world, this is still the first chapter. The first time. It's a little bit unequal, but that will restore itself in a due time. So let's read from Numbers, Bamidbar in Hebrew, which means in the desert, which is what the text starts with. Numbers 1 verse 1 till chapter 4 verse 20. I'm going to read the second chapter, the first 4 verses. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This, the people of Israel shall encamp each by his own standard, with the ensigns of their fathers' houses. They shall encamp facing the tent of meeting on every side. Those to encamp on the east side, toward the sunrise, shall be of the standard of the camp of Judah, by their companies, the leader of the people of Judah being Nachshon, the son of Aminadav, his host as numbered being 74,600. How will you make sure, and how will you make it possible for yourself that you have the Lord as your focus, as your focal point? How do you make sure that you realize that He is really there? You know it with your mind, with your brain, but how do you realize it? How are you able to make it an experience? How do you realize that He's really there? How do you prepare yourself for His return? Because it's God who returns. God is not an easy word, because it has to do with the Creator in the heavens, but He is able to come. The words are not able to describe what I'm trying to. He's able to come to us on earth in the shape and form of a human being, Son of Man, and He is able to be there and do the things that you read. He is giving the Torah to Moses on the Mount Sinai and things like that. He was the one walking in paradise. It's not God in heaven who does it, but the name God is in this being when He is in paradise and when He is on Mount Sinai and doing His things. So how are you able to prepare for God's coming to earth in the shape and form and the role of Messiah? If we do this preparation, then our behavior and our worship and our position and mentality will grow into being a royal, kingly, noble attitude, as if He is already there in bodily form, and not a being far away and we just talk to and we have no idea whom we're talking to. He's there. It's our inability to see Him, but He's there, and our behavior should be like He's really there, because He is. God is invisible. We cannot see Him, we cannot hear Him like Moshe, like Moses on Mount Sinai. I talked about him, that was able to do that. So what we need to do in order to make sure that we make it a real possibility to view, to experience His being close to us. I think that these questions that I'm posing in the beginning of this study, those questions are being answered in this fourth of the 5 books that Moses wrote in his document called Torah. The first book, Genesis, Bereshit in Hebrew, gives the description of the creation of Haaretz, which is a Hebrew word meaning the earth, but also meaning the land of Israel. And it doesn't explain which of the two is meant there. And the usual explanation is that it's the whole earth. But it's really, really possible that it is the creation of the land of Israel and of the humanity as a whole, being there in the paradise situation. And from there, the creation of the people of Israel took place. And there was the creation of Israel as people. There was the captivity in the land of Egypt. That's the first book. The second book, Shmot in Hebrew, Exodus in the language that you understand. The second book is about the leaving, the fleeing from Egypt, leaving Exodus out of Egypt and partaking of the journey back to the land of Israel. The third book is about priesthood, Leviticus, Vayikra in Hebrew, and the third book is about priests, and the fourth book, the book that we just started today, is about the manner in which Israel is able to keep the Lord close to itself as people, with the tent of meeting, with all the services that were held there, and so forth and so on. Israel keeping the Lord close, and the Lord keeping Israel close to Himself. And after the realistic live meeting at the Mount of Sinai, it was important to keep this unique one-time situation of this meeting of man and God, and receiving the Torah as a very precious document. It was important to keep that meeting alive, if at all possible. And the tent of the meetings was serving as a replacement, as a trying to repeat that meeting on Mount Sinai. Very important to realize that, because that meeting was unique, but we're trying in our services also today, we're trying to feel and experience some of that meeting that took place there, this exchange of love and of appreciation and of grace and of information. All that took place. What happened at Mount Sinai? It was the Shekhinah, it was the presence of God, the royal divine presence of God that appeared and rested on the people of Israel, and the people that traveled with Israel, the non-Jewish people that rested with, traveled with us on the mount and on the people. There are rabbis like Moshe ben Nachman, also called Nachmanides, who are talking about the many parallels between the tabernacle and what happened at Mount Sinai. And they call specifically talk about the laws of the tent of meetings and what the Lord said on and has spoken on this Mount Sinai of Sinai. And those parallels present the idea that the experience at the Mount has been prolonged or repeated in the sense during the sessions in the tent of meeting. Later, in our temple, the first temple destroyed in the second temple. Later than that, starting already in the second temple period, in our synagogues, also in our congregation, Bet Yeshua in Amsterdam. If you want an introduction of our congregation, look at our congregational website, BETH dash Yeshua, YESHUA.nl, and on the homepage you'll see an introduction, short video of what our congregation is all about, with music, accompanied with music and imagery. So it's beautiful to see this, I think. I say it with pride and with appreciation to God who made this possible. So there is the question: how can I come as close as possible to this experience that took place on Mount Sinai? By going to my synagogue on Shabbat? Usually yes, but not always. There are special circumstances in which this is impossible, and I need to be able to be close and grow close to God also when I'm not in the synagogue during the week, and under circumstances where the Shabbat meetings are not possible because of whatever takes place. Could be a war situation, could be a viral epidemic that takes place. Whatever it is, I need to be able to be prepared to worship God in truth and in spirit. Can I have this at home? There are people that stay home and say, oh, I can do this at home. In a sense, yes, I wouldn't say no, but you won't learn the respectful contact with other people around you, because the way you deal with people around you, you might say, I don't trust them, and they're always this and that. The way you trust them and serve them and are trusted and are served or not, or the lack thereof, is a reflection of your relationship with God. So it's nothing, this being together, when it's possible to be together. The experience at Mount Sinai was not experienced in a family tent, but it was something where everybody was there. Gathered together around Mount Sinai with the eternal God on top, giving, teaching in more than a month to our Jewish teacher Moshe, who didn't want this role in the first place, but he took it upon himself and was assisted by his brother Aaron. So the tabernacle was the way in which to remind and reminisce and re-experience, if possible, regarding Mount Sinai and the visit that the Lord performed toward Israel and the soulmates of Israel. Remember, there were soulmates, people of all kinds of nations, and were there also receiving the law. The law was not given to Israel only, but also to people of other people groups, nations. Everybody had to behave in a holy way. All of Israel was filled with the Spirit of God, and so they were able to appreciate and to understand and to validate what was taking place. Because of God's Spirit was there, churches have made this celebration of the receiving of God's present from heaven, the Torah, they have made it into the feast of the Spirit. Wrongfully so, because all the feasts are feasts of the Spirit, and daily life is a day with the Spirit of God, if possible. But don't leave out the fact that God gave His word. The word that you have is because of this situation that we are celebrating starting tonight at sunset. The way in which Israel had to stand around the mountain is described clearly in the first words of this fourth book, was the way also in which they stood around the tent of meetings at certain moments with banners, degalim in Hebrew, flags, but also formations of 3 tribes under the leadership of one designated tribe. The banners, I will mention them shortly, and all these pictures that I'm describing right now and are painting for you are to get an impression and coming into awe of who God is and how He organized these things. The banners starting in the east with the tribe of Judah, the representation of Torah, with the symbol of the lion, with the 2 paranymphal tribes, Issachar, also a symbol of Torah, and Zebulun, that has to do with riches, spiritual riches. Then in the south, there was the tribe of Reuben, symbolizing man. It's the Hebrew word Reu, which has to do with seeing, and Ben, which meaning is the sun, see the sun. In the names of the sons of Jacob, are also included the story of what God has been doing through His Son Yeshua. It's a Jewish story. There's nothing New Testamental new about the coming of Messiah. It's a total description already taken place in the words that we read in the first chapters of this new book of Numbers. With Gad as tribe, meaning power, and Shimon meaning reconciliation. Then in the west, the tribe of Ephraim, meaning power also, with the symbol of the cow, the oxen, with Menashe, also the same animal, and Benjamin the wolf. In the north, the tribe of Dan, in the word is also something of darkness, and in what kind of meaning it depends. Dan has the symbol of the animal, the serpent, with Asher, the light that shines into the darkness, and Naphtali, a special grace of God, is included in that name, that last name. So the interesting combinations and colors and characteristics in these names, in these tribes, in this formation around this central point, this focal point of the tent of meetings. But it didn't stay there. It's not that unique. The events took place, but Ezekiel is seeing these things in the heavens. There is a heavenly shrine, a heavenly Merkava, a heavenly throne in the heavenly places, with a throne in the center, 4 animals surrounding it. And I would love to read, and I'm going to, from Ezekiel, certain verses. You will see them on the screen, chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, chapter 1 also verse 10, and verse 21 and verse 26. Quickly, to get this impression and to see how this is continued, and therefore realizing from which place Messiah is returning to us, which richness is there. Ezekiel chapter 4. As I looked, says this prophet, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness round about it, fire flashing forth continually, in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming bronze. From the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the form of men. As for the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man in the front, the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, and the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and the 4 had the face of an eagle at the back. Verse 22. Over the heads of the living creatures there was the likeness of a firmament, a sky, a spiritual heaven, shining like crystal, spread out above their heads. And above that firmament, over their heads, there was the likeness of a throne, in appearance like sapphire stone. And seated above the likeness of a throne was the likeness, as it were, You see how careful he is in the choosing of his words, of a human form. So there is the formation of this in the heavens, and yet at the same time also of Israel on earth, with in the center the tabernacle and the 4 banners around it, and man and lion and oxen and an eagle as recognizable creatures serving God. Read Ezekiel 1st chapter verse 10. Let me see. I have the let me see if I can find what I'm trying to read to you. I haven't read all the texts yet. So before I'm going to continue with the Revelation chapter 4 verse 6. I also want to say that in Revelation 5 verse 6 to 12, which we'll read as the third main text, you'll see more of this. But first, Revelation 4 verse 6. Before the throne there is as it were a sea of glass, like crystal, and round the throne on each side of the throne are 4 living creatures full of eyes in front and behind. And then Revelation 7 verse 11, you see the language of Ezekiel repeated in Revelation. All the angels stood around the throne and around the elders and the 4 living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped God. And then Revelation 19 verse 4, the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures. They were not yet known as we know it, known to Ezekiel, but they are added to this revelation that is given to human beings, certain prophets to relate that to us. The 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshipped God, who is seated on the throne, saying, Amen, Hallelujah. So there is this situation of this center of the tabernacle with all this special formation around it and the 4 banners. And now I'm going to read Ezekiel 1 verse 10 to you. As for the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man in front, the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side, the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and the 4 had the face of an eagle at the back. I am imploring you to see this and to be impressed and to be in awe of this image that God is entrusting to us. See how great God is. See how precious your congregation is, because it is some kind of a mirror of all this. In a trapped way. It's the tent of meetings in the beginning was the direct mirror of what took place on Mount Sinai. Then later on the temples, then later on the synagogues, and now in the year 2022, your congregation, let it be a congregation where people are at a certain moment, somewhere in the service, be in awe for who God is and how He has created all these things. See how precious this all is. So the first thing that is commanded in this 4th book of Moses is the organization of a counting of the people. And this was not a dull thing. It was not an anonymous situation of and sampling and collecting of information. It looks like everyone was counted, and everyone who was counted had a personal meeting with Moses and Aaron as an image of everybody known to God and counted and meeting with Him, as should be reflected in our meetings, our worship services in our congregations. Look, for instance, at verse 4 of chapter 1, where it says, and you need to take from each tribe a man who helps the man who is the head of the families. Those men knew their tribes by far, and they helped in order to get every person counted, to ask to come forward. So what's the picture of all this? What's the image? It's nothing dull, it's nothing impersonal, it's not something administrative, it's a personal attention for each individual person. And in Israel, what you do then, as you see described in the Bible, is that you come forward. You stand up and you come forward. Respect, and the relationship is then in place. And the one who is counted and receives the blessing of the daddy of the people. One of the high priests, Aaron, is his brother Aaron is the one who is doing this with Moses. You stand up and you receive this blessing. You were asked for your name, and you mentioned your name, and then you were blessed as an individual person who is desired and who is welcome to be there, to live, and to be part of God's kingdom. And you counted as an individual with your own validity and your own value, and you are confirmed in that value. And then you gave the holy half shekel in order to be in peace with God, reconciled with God, because counting, just as counting as an administrative action was not allowed, because it would degrade people. The half holy shekel was the means to deal with this. So the counting took place on the first of the second month of Iyar, and with this confirmation of value, of personal value, life in the desert started in this fourth of the 5 books, Bamidbar, Numbers, traveling in the direction of the country of Israel, with all the trouble, not anymore around Mount Sinai, but yet a substitute, a replacement, the tent of meetings. That tent became the temple, the first one, the second one. The first one first in Shiloh, finally in the city of Jerusalem. Slowly, surely, little Jewish congregations, shul, synagogues appeared on the scene. Small synagogues where people were repeating, in a sense, what the priests in the tent of meetings had done at the time. Until the first temple and also the second temple were there and were beautiful in the meetings that were taking place there, and then they were deleted and destroyed, destructed. Then only we had only those buildings all over the world now, synagogues, where the mirroring of the temples, which were a mirroring of the tent of meetings, which were a mirror of what took place on Mount Sinai, were taking place. Synagogues like the one in Jerusalem, of which you read in the book of Acts, and where the leader Yaakov, James as called in the English, is the leader. And those meetings took place there, and Jews were there and non-Jews came, and you read in Acts chapter 15 where James, Yaakov is talking, that the services took place on the Shabbat, and Moses was read on the Shabbat, like it is being done in our synagogue in Amsterdam, Bet Yeshua, in order to imitate what the priests in the tent of meetings had done, and to imitate what took place at Mount Sinai. Why imitate? What imitate? To make sure that you have the Lord in your eyes, in your focus, to make sure that you realize that He is really there. He is there, whether you see Him or not. Knowing this, realizing this, your behavior and your worship and your mentality and your position will be one of a king, one of a queen, one of a noble person, growing into those qualities, as if God is lively there, which He is, not lively for us to see, because God in the heavens is invisible. We cannot see Him, we cannot hear Him like Moses has been able to do, and so we make sure that we realize that He is there by our understanding. That is the Lord. Be in awe. Realize this. See him. It's from this rich, incredibly rich place where he then comes down on earth. He loves us very much. Think of his power. Think of the mighty mountains, the deep oceans. Think of the black holes in the Milky Way system of stars of which we are a part. This God, this great God, loves you and me. Incredible how he in macro and in micro configurations is able to do all these things. The laws of nature. He's very busy and occupied with the restoration of our lives after paradise, and this is part of it. Okay, enough for that. Let's go to the second main text. We find it in Haftarah, in the prophet Hosea. Also, he has mighty visions. Don't ever compare yourself with the prophets of the Bible, the Jewish prophets, because they saw and they knew and they felt and they experienced things that only prophets can experience in the right sense of the word. Hosea, we read from verse in the second chapter, verse 16 through 20. In that day, says the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal, because my dictator or something like that. For I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they, Israel, shall be mentioned by name. They, the Baals, the idols, will not be shall mentioned by name no more by Israel. I will make for you a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the creeping things on the ground, and I will abolish, this is future, the bow, the sword, and the war from the land. And I will make you lie down in safety. And I will betroth to you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and by justice, in steadfast love and by mercy. I will betroth you to me faithfully, in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. What a word to be said to Israel and to be proud of on the one hand. On the other hand, when you read Hosea, you also see that Israel has not been the faithful God is faithful, not Israel, not always. And who is? Which church is? Which church leader is? Don't be proud, be honest. Do introspection and see how you are missing and lacking. You are able to love and believe this lovable God who is full of love and who's faithful, who has faith in us, full of faith in us, and yet you can serve him as an idol. The idol Adonai, says Hosea. You can change him into something else than he really is. How you do that? You can try. You will not be able to do it, but you will change by that, not in the right way. How to do it? You do it when you what do you do when you serve an idol and believe in an idol? You honor it, you worship it with the purpose to get profit from it in an egotistic way. And if it's the God of the Bible that you misuse like this, you're still an idol worshipper because of the attitude with which you do it. And Hosea is warning Israel not to do this, and he offers the door of hope in the desert when Israel is first really shown how wrong they were, which is the grace that God shows. If you serve the Lord in this wrong way, in order to profit from it in an egotistic way, then you also treat people around you. There will be tensions if that other person doesn't do what you want that person to do. You can use them for your profit. You can manipulate. You can manipulate with a big mouth, with arguments, by tears, and get what you want. Don't be proud of it. It's the wrong way. You're serving not the God of Israel, not the God of the Bible. Fathers can become tyrants and dictators. Mothers are not able, with this attitude, they are not able to let go, to let free their sons, their daughters. One or both parents will let their kids or each other know what the kid should say, what the kid should do, and what not to do. If you are against the whatever examples, you figure it out. To which congregation they should go or not go, instead of the freedom that you should give and show to each other. So if you, on the other hand, see God as your husband and say to him, you are my husband, ishti, my man, then you will deal with God and people around you. That's in one breath. That's one action. In the Bible it's shown like that. If people treated Moses badly, then God said, you have not only treated him badly, but also me. And John, one of the disciples in the New Testament, is describing the same thing and is saying, how can you hate your brother and say that you love God? Impossible. Efshar. So in the Hebrew of nowadays, some wives call their husband Baal, Baali, which is a way of saying. It's idiom to say it like that, but literally it means my dictator. And God says, in that literal sense, change this description. I'm not your dictator, I'm like your husband, in a sense. So you will be married in the bride situation, which will be described in the Bible later also. And you will be much more respectful to me, because I'm not your dictator, so you're not under me, but it's much more a matter of freedom. You can choose, you have the free will to choose the right things and the wrong things. The Lord as Israel's husband means not damaging each other, because your attitude to other people will reflect your relationship with God. There is a parable in the New Testament with which I will end this study today that describes this. If you see the Lord as husband, in a certain sense, it means no damaging the other person by seeking your own profit. Also, knowing that he takes care of you. Also, that you can take refuge with him. Also, realizing that he's close to you like he was at Mount Sinai. Finally, also that he is building up your personal validity, your worthiness, and that he's confirming that. Very precious situation when God says, don't call me my Baal, don't make me your boss. I'm not that. And the parable of the talents, which I will close with, is showing Yeshua is working that out, taking this from Hosea and working that out. First of all, we'll go to the third one of the three main reading text. It's taken, Berit Chadashah, it's taken from Revelation, as I already said I would, chapter 5, verse 6 through 12, on the screen at the same time. Between the throne and the four living creatures, language of Ezekiel, and among the elders, I saw a lamb. So there's a new revelation added in the revelation of John. I saw a lamb standing as though it had been slain. Slain by whom? By the Romans in the time of Jesus, of Yeshua, 2,000 years ago now, but also slain at the Exodus night, when lambs were taken by all the Jewish families and their faith companions, and those lambs were slain, and the blood was smeared on the doorposts and the doors in order to show to the Lord and to the angel that walked with him that the protection of God's Messiah was with them, protecting them. With 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. special imagery talking about horns on the head of a lamb, 7 in total, and then being spirits that are sent out all over the world. He went and took the scroll, this lamb, from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne, which is God. So this lamb walks to the throne. It's the image of the Metatron, of the angel of God's face, who walks and who is next to the throne. The word Metatron says it. It's a word that you find in the older feast prayer books of Judaism for Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, where the name of the Metatron in this prayer book is written, and then that name is Yeshua, the exact name that is also used in the New Testament and known by Messianic Jews, not only by them. I will remove, and let me, wait a sec, I will go to the text here and I will continue now. He went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who was seated on the throne, and when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders, the 4 living creatures we knew, but now the 24 elders added, fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp. It's hard to fall down and have a harp in your hand. It's hard with a violin also, viola, but with a harp I guess it's also not easy, but they did it. And with golden bowls full of incense, and they were doing this special act of balance, which are the prayers of the saints. Hey, are your prayers also part of this scene that is described here? Are they worthy to be presented to the Lord? Lord, give me this, Lord, give me that. I wonder if that is also presented in those golden bowls. So make sure your prayers are also part of your preparation of the return of Messiah to earth. It was just a hint in this text, which are the prayers of the saints. So are we saints? Then they sang a new song, and the words of the song, the lyrics, are, "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals." You is the Lamb. "For you were slain by the Romans, and there before that as the lambs in the Exodus night. You were slain, and by your blood," which is not the blood 2000 years ago, but the blood of the lambs at the Passover night, "you ransom men for God from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on earth." So far the lyrics. Then I looked. I was already looking, but I looked again, says John. "And I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders the voice of many, many, many angels, numbering myriads, 100,000s of myriads and thousands of thousands, saying with a loud voice, 'Worthy is the Lamb,'" this is the Lamb that we talk about, that will return to earth, "who was slain, to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." Mighty words. So this is the Lamb in the book of Revelation. Is the Pesach lamb, is the Passover lamb, used in the Exodus night, described in the book of Exodus. And this is the Exodus which we remind ourselves and each other of. This Exodus will once be finished. It's not finished yet. Until that time, we're on the way. And it talks about a scroll. It talks about a scroll. Ezekiel knew about this scroll. He had knowledge of it. And we read that in Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. We're still painting this image of the place where the Messiah will return from. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. "When I looked, behold, a hand was stretched out to me." Ezekiel says it now. Not the Lamb, Ezekiel. "And the written scroll was in that hand. He spread it before me." He didn't open it. It was spread by the one who showed it to him. "And it had writing on the front, and on the back, and there were written on it words of lamentation and mourning and woe." It's that crying and weeping of those who were partly not guilty, and partially guilty as we all are. We're not guilty of everything in the world, but we're not totally not guilty. And there is suffering because of our part of the guilt, and also the suffering of not being guilty, so suffering unjustly by the hand of the enemies of the Lord. So there we have these things, the dishonesty, the exploiting of people, of slaves, of dishonest economics, and dishonest buying and selling, the dishonest division of the riches in the ground and in the mountains, the suppression and the killing of people, like in the war, this actual war in Ukraine, and the deceit that you find outside in the world, but also inside congregations. At the moment that this scroll is opened, there will be attention and acting and also judging by God for all this suffering that took place throughout time. That scroll cannot be opened by anybody who calls himself a prophet or whatever, who is guilty and complicit to life outside the Gan Eden, the paradise situation, has dirty hands, which we are reminded of in Psalms 24, who has clean hands can enter my mountain, but who doesn't is not allowed to do it. And we're all with dirty hands, and we're all in the situation of being cleansed and being prepared for the heavenly quarters. So who is able and allowed to accept? Like Ezekiel chapter 3 verse 2. But in a funny way. Look at Ezekiel chapter 3 verse 2. So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to what? To read? No, to eat. This is how it goes with these prophets. So therefore, don't call yourself a prophet. See what prophets are going through. Finally, all this misery will be finished, and when it's all there, the planet Earth is a planet of misery, in a sense. The scroll describes all this. In other words, God knows about it. The scroll will be opened by the Passover lamb, and his name is Yeshua. Why is he allowed to do this? Judaism knows about this name. It's mentioned in our prayer books, not it's taken out censored out because of spiritual, political reasons. That's okay. It will come out in the end. It will pan out in the end. Why is he allowed to do it? Because he's the only one who was able to give this human sacrifice that only Messiah was able and was allowed to undergo. He is worth it. He is in this high position to do it. He's the one who is able to make an end to all this misery. For everybody who is looking for peace, and he's a peacemaker on a global level. But it already took place, and Hosea talked about that, and I will, for a short moment, go back to Hosea in the second chapter, verse 14 and 15 in the English text, 16 and 17 in Hebrew. It says in 14 and 15, therefore, behold, I will allure Israel in all her misery, because Hosea is very honest, says all the dirty laundry hanging out there. I will allure her, I will bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And there I will give her her vineyards and make the valley of Achor a door of hope. This is the symbol of Yeshua taking this upon himself, saying, I am that door of hope. And there she shall answer as in the days of her youth, Israel, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt. So Bamidbar, the desert, is always been the place where our dead heavenly daddy is to be found. That's always where he speaks in the most clear way. And in our misery, our achor is the door, at the same time, is the door of hope. Are you in misery at this moment? Find the door of hope. His name is Yeshua. See your congregation, I hope, see our congregation, but Yeshua as a means given by God to deal with misery, of which you are for a part also accountable, but also as a victim, but not to stay a victim and in the role of victim, but to be somebody who is able to deal with this and holding on to God's promises. Make something visible of this, his presence on Mount Sinai where it all started. It will help you to be safe. The Lord as Israel's husband, meaning not shaming, not damaging each other by seeking our own profit, knowing that he takes care of you, knowing that you can take refuge with him, realizing that he's close to you, except you can't see him, like Mount Sinai, and realizing that he is building up and confirming your personal worthiness. So Shavuot, this Feast of Weeks, this Pentecost, if you want to use that name, starts tonight at sunset. And the celebration is this feast. It is the celebration that the Lord gave his people, existing of Jews and soulmates, has visited and gave us his word. Which purpose had this present? Not just a present and say do whatever you want with it. Not at all. No, it is to hold yourself to that word, to apply this word in your life from the book of Genesis, the beginning, to Revelation in the end, with 365 commandments in the Hebrew text and more than 1,000 in the New Testament. To commit yourself to this word of God. He will keep his word. He expects from us no less. We expect that he will come back. With what purpose? Looking, searching who kept his word. This is part of the returning. We need to realize this. He's not coming back just to do the nice things and pick up the church and the Jewish stays on earth, which are false teachings that Christian preachers have taught us, McGee and others. Make sure that be sure that he comes back to check if you kept his word. Who has committed himself, who has dedicated himself to Adonai in heaven, and therefore also to people on earth. Who doesn't do that well is using the God of the Bible as an idol, the idol Adonai, the words of Hosea. And you do that when you, what do you do? What do you do when you believe in an idol? You worship it, you honor it with the purpose to profit from it in an egotistic way for yourself, yourself and you. If you serve God like that, to profit for yourself, to receive profit for yourself, you will also treat other people around you like that. Tensions will arrive if the person doesn't do what you want. You can use people, you can manipulate people by arguments, by big mouth, by tears. Fathers become tyrants and dictators. Mothers are not able to let their sons and their daughters go and leave them to their choices. They don't trust their own upbringing by trying to hold and keep the control. Children miss the respect for their parents. It's an ongoing thing. Yeshua talked about this, the end of the study. I was promising the parable of the talents. In one of his studies, the study of the talents, it talks about his return. So I would like to read Matthew 25, verse 14 through 18. For it will be as when a man going on a journey called his servants and trusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. Talents are monetary value. I'll talk about it in a sec. Then he went away. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. How much is a talent worth in monetary value? 1 talent had a value of 6,000 denarius. 1 denarius was the silverling called in the Bible. It was a coin, a silver coin. It was the usual payment for the work of 1 day, weighing 4.5 gram. So count and do your calculation, and you'll find out that 5 talents of this coin means a value of 30,000 days of money that this person was entrusted with, the one with the 5 talents. In weight, 135 kilograms of silver. So 2 of the 3, went immediately their way in order to apply and work with and do business with those coins, because they were expecting the boss to return. The 3rd one did nothing and dug it in a hole in the ground. What was his reason? This is what we need to talk about shortly. What was his reason? You find it in verse 24 and 25. Let's read it. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, because the boss had come back and said, "What's taken place, guys? Thank you very much for the 5 and the 2, but what's going on with you? You didn't do anything." So this guy comes forward and says, "Master, boss, I knew you to be a hard man." He said that as a servant of the Lord, because it's a parable. You're a hard man because you reap where you didn't do anything. You didn't sow, and you gathered where you didn't winnow. So I was afraid. Because I didn't count anymore. It was only you. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have it. It's yours. What's the problem with that person? He is a servant. So this thing is really a nasty parable, because it's talking about servants of God, not unbelievers, non-believers, no, servants. But in his heart, he mistrusted God. He didn't trust God at all. And serving then becomes something like doing something and then having to give the honor to God for something that you have done, and keeping in possession what you should have let go a long time ago. And this ends in relationship that end in a sour way. I'm talking about people with an anger problem, and people with impatience problem, and people with a manipulation problem, and believing in fake news problem. They never served God. Hard words, but it's Yeshua who is saying this and is explaining through this parable what not to do when you are preparing for the return of his. So then there is this other kind of serving, which is the right kind of serving, where you do this with love, surrendering, not expecting thank you, doing it for the greater good. And it's that kind of serving with which you don't walk away when you don't agree with somebody about something. And it might be very small, but you just explode and you run away, never come back. Yeshua is very harsh in his decision concerning this person. His talent is being taken away and he's thrown into the outer darkness. With that as knowledge, let's prepare for the return of Messiah. And knowing what to do. I'll give you 4 points to finish with. It's hard work, but it pays. It pays off. So how to prepare? 4 points. 4 points, they come on the screen. They are: see which talents you have received. Second, use your talent faithfully. The third, remove bitterness and disappointment. Clearly desire Yeshua's return is the fourth. Let me go quickly as the final point of the study, go into these 4. seeing which talents you have received. You need to see what you have received. Not everybody can do everything. And we should not focus on the positions in a congregation, for instance, that give honor and visibility, and then becoming angry when we don't get it, because we thought we deserve it, because then we are angry at the boss who didn't regulate this in a better way. There's a problem with your relationship. So the first point was seeing which talents you have received, being thankful, not directing and requiring and demanding. The second one, use your talent faithfully, means that you need to do it in a faithful way. That means you don't walk away when you don't agree with something, because that is the behavior of that angry but a fearful servant who didn't trust his boss at all. It's like the older brother of the prodigal son parable. Both sons are Jewish with their Jewish dad. The one who stays is the one who's angry. The one who walks away is also wrong. Both are wrong. And both are types of behavior that you should not imitate. The third point was removing bitterness and disappointment. In other words, search within yourself when there would be bitterness for some unrelated reason. But it could be that it has its roots in bitterness and anger and disappointment against your daddy in the heavenly places. Take care of that bitterness and that anger and that disappointment, because you are a prisoner at this moment if you still feel that. Fourth and final, clearly desire Yeshua's return. What you need to do is look with a clear, visible desire for the returning of your Messiah. That's what we need to do. Not just, yeah, I know he's coming. He'll take his time, so we won't wait. We'll hear it, we'll read it in the newspaper. CNN will bring the news. No, you have the clear desire for the returning of your Messiah. Because he has a concern. There is a fear in Yeshua, and it's written down in Luke chapter 18 verse 8, and we need to take that fear away. We need to make sure that we are not part of that. Luke 18 verse 8 says, I might have it here somewhere, it says, when the Son of Man returns, this is words by Yeshua himself, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith and trust on earth? Whoa, that's harsh words. So take that concern away from Yeshua, experience that desire of his return, share it in your congregational meetings, because this will form and build on the formation, the spiritual formation in your heart and in your soul, and let your Messiah know and show him that he is welcome. Shabbat Shalom, and have a good celebration if you celebrate this. Pentecost is tonight. It starts at sunset, and it is coincidental with the Pentecost in the church, in the most of the churches in the Bible, not every, but I'm saying look in the Bible for the right meaning of all these things. Prepare your soul, because Yeshua is coming back and he wants you to be part of the cloud and the crowd. Shabbat Shalom.
Ja.
Hey, je bent
Het
er.
staat vernieuwd en op het einde.
Ja, fijn.
Ik zal hem ook bij YouTube nu uit gaan zetten.
Ja. Ik dreigde wat teksten over te slaan, geloof ik, maar dat is toch goed gekomen.
Ja, dat kwam goed. Het was even zoeken.
Ja, klopt. Ik weet niet wat er gebeurde, maar dat maakt niet uit.